I'm joined by Dr. Alveda King. She is the niece of the late civil rights activist and leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, one of my heroes, as you know from watching this show. She is also the director for African American Outreach for Priests for Life, the pro-life group based in Staten Island. Dr. King, it's a delight to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
Hello, Randall. This is great.
Good
It's
to see you again.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the director of African American Outreach. That must be a tough sled.
Actually, working for perhaps one of the largest pro-life organizations in America and largest Catholic pro-life organization in America, it's a challenge. And I met Father Frank Pavone in the late 1990s.
Now, you're not Catholic, right?
I'm not Catholic.
Okay.
He's the national director of Priests for Life, and soon after I met Janet Morana, executive director. But we had so many things in common, and when I first met Father Pavone, he was quoting my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1967 Christmas sermon that my uncle spoke just a few months before he was killed. And he said, basically, if we respect the human personality, we won't kill anybody. And as Father Pavone quoted that, I said, you know, that's absolutely true. And my uncle was pro-life, I'm pro-life. And Father Pavone and I began to talk, and over the next few years, we began to appear together and do some pro-life work together. And formally, almost 10 years ago now, I became the director of African American Outreach for Priests for Life.
Well, there has been, as you know, this tension in the African American community because the polling data shows that most African Americans are in fact pro-life.
Yeah.
But it also shows that overwhelmingly they will vote party line with the Democratic Party. Obviously, I think the number was 92% of African Americans voted for President Obama, even though he is a diehard supporter of child killing. So what do you do in that arena? I mean, that would be, it would seem to me to be pretty difficult. And ultimately, what's your goal?
Over the last 10 years, I devoted almost all of my time to making sure that we inform, educate, and activate the African American community as to the truth that abortion harms all babies, often harms mothers, that abortion is decimating the communities of America, and the African American community is most impacted because we have about 13% of African Americans populating this great nation, and yet we get about 1/3 of the abortions. That's by design from Planned Parenthood, founded by racist eugenicist Margaret Sanger, who said that colored people are like weeds and they need to be exterminated. Let's not let that word get out, but let's put it in a pretty package and go after them. And that is what they've done. That's what they've done.
Successful. Do you find a receptive ear? What's the hearing that you get in the African American community when you bring this to them? Say, look, you got a Planned Parenthood right here in your public school or right next door, and they're targeting you.
When I started several years ago, people said, that's something that rich, white, Republican men in closed rooms smoking cigars are making up. But we began to, through efforts such as films like My Alpha 21 by Life Dynamics, Blood Money, the film, the story of John, a baby who was aborted and left to die after he was aborted, which, by the way, the President of the United States says that if a baby was marked for abortion, if the baby lives, leave the baby to die because the intent was to abort the baby. And so I guess to answer your question, what's so remarkable is that while many African Americans will be pro-life and think that's wrong, they could still vote for candidates that thinks it's okay to abort babies or to harm those babies and the wombs of the mothers. So there's a disconnect. People cannot see the connection between morality and letting your vote follow those values that you know are right in your heart. There's been a disconnect.
It'd be like voting for Herod after he authorized the murder of the babies at Bethlehem. God have mercy. It's time for me to take a break. I have been joined by Dr. Alveda King, and we will be back and join her visit in another segment. Hope you're enjoying it. You're listening and watching The Voice of Resistance.